We here at Lost in America set out to try to share some of the almost forgotten myths, legends, and stories that make up the fabric of Americana. And today we have a real treat, because just down that road is the Pioneer Saloon, a still standing, still serving slice of the American Old West. I'm Garrett Coon, and this is Lost in America. America is a melting pot, but it's also a tapestry made up of countless threads, each a story. Well, on this show, we're searching for some of the lost and forgotten myths and legends that make up the fabric of this country. I'm Garrett Coon, and I'm lost in America. Freedom, liberty, gold, the promise of wide open spaces and endless opportunity. These are some of the things that drew people out west. But what happens when the gold dries up? What happens when the opportunity drifts away? We're here in Goodsprings, Nevada, a town that used to have a larger population than Las Vegas. But have you even heard of it? Probably not. And that's because almost 100 years ago, the gold was gone. There are only about 200 souls left remaining here in Goodsprings, and only one operating business, the Pioneer Saloon. The oldest saloon in Nevada. Still in operation, as you can see. What keeps the people coming here? Well, today we're going to find out. Hi, how's it going?
Great, how are you today?
Doing all right. Garrett.
Garrett, Noel.
Noel, nice to meet
Nice
you,
to
Noel.
meet you, Garrett.
It's quite the place you have here, Noel.
Well, thank you. Thank you. This is the oldest bar in Clark County in the southern Nevada area.
I feel like I'm walking into a slice of Old West history right
Oh,
here.
yeah, this is the real deal.
Well, do you mind if we have a seat
Please,
and
please,
chat
absolutely.
about it a bit?
Sure.
I can feel the stories of the place just
yeah.
demanding to be shared.
Lots of resin on the wall.
Yeah, it's thick. It's definitely thick with history here.
Yes.
Well, before we get into the history of the saloon itself, of the
Yes.
Pioneer Saloon itself, perhaps you could share a little bit of the history of the area, Goodsprings, Nevada. What Goodsprings here?
Well, Goodsprings was a booming mining town 100 years ago. Okay, in fact, it was one of the #1 districts in the United States for the production of lead.
Okay.
And so during the war, there was a lot of lead brought out of this area.
All right.
And before that, it got its name from a gentleman named Joseph Good. He came through here in 1835 with a mule train, and he stopped here to water and spend the night.
All the way back to 1835?
1835.
So how long after Joseph Good first came here did people actually begin to settle here on a regular basis?
People started settling in around 1860, and then steadily kept climbing the population, and it peaked in the from 1910 to 1918 was the peak of the time.
About how many people lived?
Well,
in the
that's
area
all
around
up in the air, but at one time they say there was as many as 8,000 miners in the area.
Okay.
And then one prominent business person decided to bring in 200 ladies of the night to service the area. So I always joke that I'm sure they were tired ladies, 200 to 8,000.
I'm sure they were tired ladies, and one of the after effects of guys spending time with ladies like that, I'm sure the population continued to boom.
Yeah, there you go.
So, 1910 to 1920 is when this was a booming community. Actually, a larger population than Las Vegas at the
That's
time.
correct. It was a more exciting place to be than Las Vegas. The road in front of the saloon was the main road to California at the time.
Wow. Does that road actually still go all the way through to California?
You can get to California. You're going to need a dirt bike because there's a lot of holes in the road and places where it's washed out. All the asphalt is gone, so it's gravel, but yeah.
That sounds like an adventure in its own right.
I've traveled on most of it, and it's quite an adventure.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Another good reason to come out here if you needed one. So when was the Pioneer Saloon itself first founded?
Well, the Pioneer Saloon was the buildings were actually kits, and they came from the Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Oh, wow.
They were bought out of New York City, put on a train, sent across country to San Francisco in 1909.
09, wow.
And then they were shipped up here to Goodsprings, and they sat for a few years, and then they got everything together and opened for business in 1913.
1913, so we're talking 113 years of continuous operation here.
Yes. And there, at the time, there was another 7 bars that opened up right after the Pioneer Saloon. So at the heyday, there was 8 bars here, 6 cafes, 4 brothels, and 1 hotel. However, now, today, there's only the Pioneer Saloon left. Everything else is gone.
So right around 8,000, let's say up to 10,000 people may have called this area home.
Correct.
About 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Nowadays, how many souls are we going to find residing
Less
in
than
Goodsprings?
200.
Fewer than 200.
Yeah, fewer than 200.
So the mines in the area closed up?
Yes, they're all closed. This area within a 5-mile radius is just riddled with mines everywhere. It's mind-blowing how many mines there are, so to speak.
Careful about the puns there.
Yeah, there you go.
I understand that this site, the Pioneer Saloon, is not only a piece of old Western history, but it also contains quite a bit of Hollywood history too, as well. Is that right?
Yes. It's amazing how many films have been filmed here over the years. How many famous people have come here. The most famous thing that happened at the Pioneer Saloon was during World War II, when actress Carole Lombard, which was married to Clark Gable, she died in a plane crash behind the Pioneer Saloon on Mount Potosi. The sheriff chose the Pioneer Saloon to be the base camp of search and rescue. So the sheriff came out here, put together a posse, and went up on the mountain to look for survivors of the plane crash.
Now I understand that took place in 1942, correct?
Correct.
How long did the search go on?
The search went on for about 2 days. They knew where the plane was. It was just difficult to get up to the site.
We've done some filming around the area to sort of showcase it, and it's pretty rugged.
It's rugged. Yes, absolutely. And at the time it was in January, so there was snow as well. So it was real hard to get up the mountain.
It actually snows here? I just
yes.
assumed that it stayed sweltering hot all the time.
No. The winter gets very cold here.
While that searching was going on, where was Clark Gable?
Well, Clark Gable was waiting for Carole Lombard in Burbank, California, at the airport. And when he got word that her plane had crashed, he got in his car and he drove up here as quick as he could get here. And he arrived just before the sheriff and his search party were to depart. And he met with the sheriff. He said, "I'm going with you." And the sheriff said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Gable, we cannot have you go. Please wait here." So Mr. Gable waited here at the Pioneer Saloon for about 2 days. We figure it's a little over a day, somewhere between a day and 2. And he wouldn't talk to anyone. He sat at the end of the bar, smoked a cigar, wouldn't talk to anyone, and he would take his cigar and just hold it on the bar and burn holes in the bar. and nobody wanted to say anything to him, so they let him do it. So today you can still see the holes that Clark Gable burnt in the bar. It's the peak on the right.
The peak on the right with the last little rays of sun striking the top?
You see the vertical part? It looks like a nose if you're laying on your back.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, so where the nostrils would be, that part is solid granite, and that's where they hit.
Oh,
and they hit full speed. And my theory, everyone has their theory, but my theory, being a pilot myself, I believe that they were doing a buzzing the top of the mountain to show off for Carole Lombard and the people on the plane, because it was military people on the plane, and they were mostly pilots themselves. So they probably did a low pass, and at the last minute they got a downdraft, and because the way that's the only thing that could make sense, because that is like so tiny. You know, this is a big valley. To hit that, you'd have to aim for it. It'd be hard to hit it.
Sure.
You know? So
what wasn't just Carole Lombard and the crew? How many total?
Carole Lombard and her mother, and I think there was like 21 people.
Wow.
Yeah, that all perished. That's odd. You can see a plane right
Yeah,
over there.
I was just about to know. We can see a plane passing in the background. Well, I understand, unfortunately, that's not the only piece of tragic history or violent history that is contained here in the Pioneer Saloon. Care to share any of the other juicy bits of
yeah, the year was
stories?
1915, and there was a gambler named Paul Kowski, and Paul was also a miner. Everybody knew him. He was a nice guy when he wasn't drinking. The problem was he was always drinking. And after a 4-day winning spree at a poker game, somebody called him on the fact that he won again, and he got upset, jumped at the dealer. The dealer shot him dead, and he laid on the floor for 10 hours. There's bullet holes in the wall. They did find that there was 5 aces on the table. That's why he was called out. And there's only 4 aces in a deck, obviously, so
every deck I've ever played with.
Yeah, that was a problem. But the body lay there for 10 hours. The justice of the peace, which was also the coroner at the time, had to come from a long ways away, Pioche, Nevada. Drove down here, met with the guys, or he rode a horse. I don't know how he got here, but he came here.
15, yeah.
Yeah. And he asked him what happened. The guy said, well, he had won 4 days in a row, and there was 5 aces on the table. He was cheating, so we shot him. And the justice of the peace said, well, that doesn't prove he was the one that was cheating. So everyone kind of got worried, but luckily he went over to the body. The justice of the peace walked over the body, looked up his sleeve, and sure enough there was cards up his sleeve and a mechanism. All he had to do is lower his arm and the card would fall. So that he ruled it right then a justifiable homicide, because in those days...
Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
So, back in those days,
Yes.
if you were caught cheating at cards, you could be gunned down justifiably?
Absolutely. Or if you stole a horse, same deal.
Well, horse thief, and I have heard, is a hanging offense.
Right. That's
Cheating at
exactly
cards apparently was also a hanging offense.
Yes, sir.
So the reason that it was justifiable wasn't that he lunged at the dealer, it wasn't that he threatened another person's life. The official cause was, or the official justification was that he was a card cheat.
He was a card cheat. And so
I'm curious.
Yeah.
That's not still law in Nevada, is it?
Well, everywhere. No, not in Nevada, but
Not to suggest that it's a good idea to start trying to cheat in when you
the only place it's a law
is
is in this room when I'm in here. No, I'm just
Oh, okay. Well. Back to the Hollywood history.
Yes.
For folks sitting there at home watching this, where might they have actually seen the Pioneer Saloon? Has it been featured in films before?
Yeah, absolutely. You might have seen the Pioneer Saloon in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Johnny Depp, or the Mexican with Brad Pitt, Miss Congeniality 2, Sandra Bullock, Cheech and Chong, Things Are Tough All Over, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. There's been so many movies here. I'm not sure if George Carlin's shot here. So many famous people have been here and filmed here. We kind of lose track. We do have a memorial wall for some of those movies.
Do you happen to recall what the most recent film was?
Well, the most recent thing we did was the state of Nevada's commercial.
Okay.
So if you're coming to Nevada and you're searching tourism, we're going to pop up on their website and on all their television commercials.
As you should, because this is
the real Nevada.
This is the real deal. This is the genuine silver dollar of Nevada history, of Old West history. Really.
Yep. This bar owns liquor license number 1 for all of the Las Vegas area.
And now it's probably up to 10,000 or more.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many there are. But.
Going back to some of the more sordid history of the place.
Yeah.
In addition to poor Paul Kowski, card cheat that he was.
Right.
I understand. Unfortunately, he's not the only soul to have passed on in these premises.
Paul Kowski was 1915. 1918, C.P. Harrison was another gentleman that passed away. C.P. was a rich mine developer and owner, and he was an older gentleman. He always liked to stay reserved. However, he always had a beautiful woman on his side. And with all these prostitutes in town, there was no shortage of beautiful women. So one day he walked in with a lady to the Pioneer Saloon, ordered a drink, and there was a new guy in town. New miner, didn't know who C.P. Harrison was. And smarted off to him and said, "Hey, old man, what are you doing with that young, beautiful girl? Why would she ever go home with you? She's going to go home with me." And Owen smarted off the guy. And C.P. kept his cool. He says, "Sonny," he goes, "I might be old, but I got a lot more money than you do." And boy, the guy just lit up, got mad, rushed over to C.P. and started fighting the old guy. And which was terribly disrespectful, but in the Wild West,
Sure.
It was the Wild West. So C.P. pulled his gun out to protect himself, and the young man overpowered him and turned the gun on C.P. and shot him, and he died on the floor in 1918. One of the more recent ones was a gentleman named Frank, and Frank came in here all the time, and he would have his one glass of beer a day, and then he would go home. Well, he got quite elderly, and they had to hospitalize him. He walked out of the hospital, and they wanted to put him in hospice. Said, "You need to take care of yourself. You're not going to be here much longer." He goes, "Well, I'm sure as hell not going to spend my last days in the hospital." So he walked out, pulled the IVs out himself, and walked out. Came out here. He sat out here and drank one beer a day for about 2 more weeks. And one day he's drinking at the bar. He gets his glass half drank, and he drops dead right there on the floor. So, and that's the way he wanted to go. He died happy. He died where he wanted to die.
And that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Nice change of pace on the death history of this place. At least one went out with a smile on his face. In total, how many people have passed away here over the years?
That I know of, probably 10 or 11.
10 or 11?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, over the years. And then, it's real interesting. We've got an uncountable amount of people that have spread their ashes up here, felt compelled that they wanted to be here after they passed on. So the property is teeming with the spiritual essence of the days gone by, so to speak. And you feel it when you're here. You really can feel it.
You really do.
Yeah.
You already touched on something that I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
Which was, the mines have dried up.
Yeah.
The lead's not here anymore.
Right.
What keeps people here? What keeps people coming back here? What is it about the place, if you could put your finger on it?
The first time I walked in here 30 years ago, I felt an amazing peace of mind when I walked through those front doors. And I didn't even want to come and visit this place. And people have told me over the years they get the same feeling. There's something real peaceful about the Pioneer Saloon. You really walk back in time. You really are in 1913 when you're in this building. And so I think it's probably a lot of the people that passed on in their essence and their spirits being here makes you feel that way. But to bring us up to modern days, we get tourists from all over the world. And we get bike clubs, we get car clubs, we get women organizations, we get what an eclectic group of people. So on an average Saturday or Sunday, we will have 300 to 500 guests. I mean, there's a lot of people here.
You have more people walking through these doors than live in this community.
Twice. Exactly.
That's amazing.
Exactly.
I understand that there was a bartender here
Right.
who took his own life.
Yes.
Would you mind? It's a pretty tragic story from what I've heard, but
Yeah.
but could you please share that for us?
Mr. Butterfield. Mr. Butterfield was known as the Pioneer's best bartender that it ever had and ever will have. Mr. Butterfield would come in before the miners got off work, okay? And he would get the bar all set up. He actually was a miner himself. However, he got off early to come open the saloon and get everything ready. So when people would come in, when all the miners would shuffle in the door, he would line them all up at the bar, and if they look a little down, he would buy everybody their first shot out of his own money, okay? He'd buy them all a whiskey. And then he had a joke, the joke of the day. And this went on forever, and these miners really wanted to hear this joke every day. And they always loved Mr. Butterfield. So one day, and by the way, Mr. Butterfield had one son, and he used to tell people, my son will never be a miner. He will never work in the mines. Well, his son lived in Las Vegas, not in Goodsprings. He lived with his brother because he didn't want his son to be raised around a bunch of miners in the whole industry here. So one day, miners shuffle in and sit down. He bought everybody a shot, and he says, I got the best joke ever for you. He goes, have you ever heard about the bartender that killed himself? And everyone goes, no, tell us about the bartender that killed himself. And he goes, watch. And he took a .44 and blew his head off behind the bar and dropped dead with a big smile on his face. Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to top that punchline.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Wow. When did that happen? When did that occur?
That happened in 1926, I believe. Then we had another lady that was a prostitute that got killed in the bathroom, the ladies' restroom. Had gotten an argument with some guy, and he followed her in there and killed her. So that was back in the teens.
Now, in spite of the violent history of the place, as you mentioned, and as I can attest just from walking in through the doors, there's a peacefulness
Yes.
to the atmosphere here. I'm curious whether you personally have experienced anything here, and if so, have your experiences played into that sort of peaceful, almost playful, adventurous spirit to the place?
It sounds as crazy as it sounds. You know, when I bought this place, there was rumors of ghosts and all this crazy stuff, which I didn't believe anything of, you know. So, but since then, you know, it's been 10 years now. Boy, I can tell you, there's endless stuff that happens here that you can't explain, and things you see sometimes. There's a short little miner that sometimes appears at the end of the bar, and you kind of capture him in your corner of your eye, and then when you look, he's not there. So there's a lot of things that happen here, and most of our employees will tell you the same thing.
Would you say that you have a fairly large contingent of people that come here in the hopes of experiencing something like that?
Yes. In fact, we do these lockdowns, we call them haunted lockdowns at night, where the guests come in and after the bar is closed and have the ghost hunting equipment. And boy, it is really something what happens during those tours. They usually go from midnight till 3 in the morning. And we don't have violent type activity. We have things that are, like things moving or capturing pictures of unexplainable objects and whatnot.
I can't thank you enough for sharing your time, sharing this wonderful location with us. I have one last question, I suppose.
Absolutely.
If I were to go out and try really, really hard, am I likely to find any gold up in them hills?
For sure.
For sure?
For sure, you'll find gold.
What are we doing here?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna go earn a thirst and then come back.
Yeah, go get some gold. You can buy some whiskey. How's that? All right.
Deal.
All right.
Deal. Thank you so much for this. This has been a treat.
Oh, likewise. Thank you for coming in. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
My pleasure. We set out to uncover some of the myths, the lore, the legends, the stories that make up the fabric of Americana. And after spending time at the Pioneer Saloon, I actually feel like I've gotten to live out a slice of Americana. If you'd like to live out your own slice of the Old West, Pioneer Saloon here in Goodsprings, Nevada. It's just a 30-minute drive down the I-15 from Las Vegas. Where are we going next on this adventure? I'll find out next time. Until then, I'm Garrett Coon, and I couldn't be happier to be lost in America.
Rock me, mama, like a wind and a rain. Rock me, mama, like a southbound train. Hey, mama, rock me. I'm running down the coast, up from New England. I was born to be a fiddler in an old time stream.